Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jared Moon. The Garage Gym Athlete Podcast is a result of my desire to build better humans, unequivocal coaches, and autonomous athletes. I've spent the last several years obsessing over program design, nutrition, and every other way you can optimize human performance. This podcast distills the latest scientific research with what I've learned and blends it with the not-so-scientific field of mental toughness. We are here to build you into a dangerously effective athlete. If you enjoy this podcast, you can find out more about our training at garagegymathlete.com. And if you want to pursue more into the field of coaching and programming, head to endof3fitness.com. Thanks for listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Moon here, and welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Today we have Ashley Hicks. How's it going, Ashley?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Joe Courtney. What's up, dude?
How's it going?
And Kyle Schrum. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good.
Awesome to have everyone here. We're going to be diving into some awesome stuff. This is the first episode where we're going over a book as our topic. And remember, we're going to be doing that each month. So the last podcast of the month will be covering the book. If you guys want to get in on the book, you can join the EO3 Book Club Facebook group. I don't know how to find it. I don't even know how you can find it, but join it, ask around on the Garage Gym Athlete community if you're in there, and I'm sure we'll link to it. But we already announced the books. So this month, January, is Deep Nutrition. Next month, hopefully I'm not screwing up the order, is it
Why We Sleep?
Mm-hmm.
Why We Sleep is next month, and then Atomic Habits in
Not
March.
Why We Can't Sleep. I accidentally got that book instead.
Joe read the wrong book ahead of time.
So I'm just going to do my own book review.
Yeah, so
Special episode with Joe.
Yeah.
That's what we'll be covering today. But first, updates. I have a bunch, but I want to get everybody else's first. So Joe, updates, man. How's life?
So my main thing, so Liz is gone. She's on deployment, so I am home alone with the dog. I will be focusing on going into this. Really, it's actually a great segue for our topic today. Really dialing in my nutrition, changing up some new things, really getting clean, being smarter and planning out things a little bit more, planning out my macros. Probably going to be diving back into the Fuels course. # is a sponsor. And yeah.
We are sponsored by the Fuels course.
Yeah. So really, really buckling down on nutrition and seeing how changing up some fasting stuff too as well.
Have you just gotten like a little too lax lately? What's the...
lax somewhat because it was Liz's last month. So we were just like going out and doing things a little bit more. And then even for a few months, I was trying to eat clean, and trim down a little bit, but it wasn't working. So I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on with that. And it's also really easy for me to eat very plain and boring when I'm by myself. So, because I don't mind eating 2 chicken thighs for 4 meals straight in the week or whatever. So, yeah, it was just trying new stuff out too.
So you're getting old.
Kind of. Why? Wait, why am I getting old?
Hey, diet, nutrition get harder the older you get, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Or I don't know what's going on with training. Yeah.
Oh, you're throwing that back at me, huh?
No, me. My training. Like the training's been this. I've been doing the same stuff, but for some reason, I just haven't been quite in it.
Well, sounds
Injuries.
like you got comfortable, so you got to kill a little bit of comfort and see what happens.
Yeah, there you go.
Ashley, updates from you.
So last week I talked about my garage gym. It got fixed today, which means I don't
Like the actual garage door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't have to work out on my driveway. I think my neighbor thinks I'm crazy, but that's cool. And then I told you guys about this on our team meeting, but next week is my birthday for anyone listening. So, or I guess
you want to get her
technically,
something.
yeah. So technically it would be Wednesday when this comes out. So I need a rower because I ran this past Monday's workout and I had someone stop in the middle of the road, back up and ask me if I was okay because VD put in some mountain climbers after every 5 minutes as well as bear crawls and reverse bear crawls. And so I had someone stop on the side of the road, back up and ask me if I was okay, which is nice.
You went from running to crawling?
I went from,
Yeah.
I went from running to on my knees. Yeah, pretty much.
I've had that happen actually more than a few times. So don't feel bad.
That's true.
Well, generally I'll be like, I will have done maybe Murph or something. And I'll be laid out in the middle of my driveway, just like, and then someone will drive up and then like stop. Dude, you all right? I'm like, good. Go away.
Covering.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So you want us to get you a rower? All
No.
of us pitch in and that's
Yeah.
what
I mean, if the entire garage gymnastics
GoFundMe.
community wants to do it, I'm cool with that.
All right. We'll start a loose change campaign. Kyle, how updates from you, man?
Well, mine is building on last week as well because I got dad shamed for not knowing which of my kids walked first. So
Has your wife listened to the podcast? Because I'm sorry about that.
No, but I did ask her which one it was. And so it was my son, my 3-year-old. He walked before our 1-year-old. He started walking the week of his birthday when he turned 1. And our daughter didn't start walking until like 2 months after she turned 1. So,
well, I track everything. So, I mean, it doesn't make me a good dad. It just makes me a psycho.
Yeah, pretty much.
He has Excel spreadsheets.
It was a competition.
Yeah.
It was a competition between my kids. So I had to know, like, now I can tell them when they get older who's the best.
There's like pull down charts. They go into their bedroom and it pulls down. And he has a pointer that's just like, look, you did this.
Well, they really just got like progressively worse. So William was first, Graham, and he's my firstborn. Graham was second. William beat him by 3 weeks. And then Eleanor was last by a long shot, by like 2 months. So embarrassing.
yeah. So anyway, that's my update. So
Awesome.
I'll start tracking more obscure metrics about my kids starting now so that I have some interesting things to share with them when they're older.
Well, speaking of kids, that's perfect segue into my update. So today, actually the day of recording this, I had on my calendar for like the last couple weeks, sports day with Graham because they're doing sports day at his school. And so it was something this morning at his school. I'm not really a details guy. Like I used to be a details guy and then entrepreneurship and 3 kids. I just get stuff done now. The details take care of themselves most of the time. But it's bad a lot of times because I don't know what I'm walking into. And so I was just on my calendar, I'm going. So I'm going to sports day with Graham this morning. And I was like standing around this morning when I make the boys breakfast. And I was like, Graham just woke up and I was like, Graham, it's sports day. We're going to do awesome. You and I are going to crush it. We're going to play football. I was like, you're awesome at football. We're going to have such fun sports day. And he got all excited and stuff. And then Emily looks at me kind of with like a confused face. And she's like, I don't think you know what sports day is. And I was like, it's sports day at my son's school. Like, this is pretty simple. Like, we're going to play sports at his school. Like, let's go for it. I'm dressed athletically. And she's like, nah, well, take him to school. You have fun at sports day. I was like,
Man,
She didn't even tell
set you up.
I was like, okay. And so I show up and it was a sports themed donut party. And so we were supposed to wear a sports jersey to then sit there and drink Capri Sun and eat donuts. And I was like, oh, this
So
is
offended.
so offended. Krispy Kreme donuts. And
Triggered.
yeah, I got pretty triggered. Well, Graham was eating a donut. So I would love to talk more and more about children's nutrition because we let our kids eat junk occasionally, but mainly because we want them to be able to self-regulate. And that's what I love about my kids right now. And they're already making good decisions. Like I don't shame them for bad decisions where we try to educate every step of the way. But this morning I was like, yeah, have a donut. And so he's having a donut and I didn't say anything, but he got a water instead of a Capri Sun. And he's like, I don't need that much sugar. Like actual words. And I'm like, that's awesome. And so he eats the donut, but he doesn't drink the Capri Sun. But I didn't, say a word about it. And that's the thing too, is like, if we give them a giant birthday cake, they like at a kid's birthday party, they eat like half of it. They don't finish it. And so those are the things that we're trying with our kids. But anyway, that was my sports day experience. It wasn't phenomenal, but I didn't run into any salt biscuit guys or anything. So,
Oh man.
It's fine.
So next sport day, you just take salt biscuits with you.
Ugh.
Yeah. Well, I
for
only
other
ran into
people.
one awkward "what do you do" conversation, which is the ultimate like bad. Like we're at a donut party. It's already weird. Anyway, so I'm going to go through my other updates really fast. So Garage Gym Athlete Tour, that video has dropped on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, you can go check it out. Should I reveal the big new piece of equipment here
Obviously.
or just let people go to YouTube?
Well, you made us go to YouTube.
Yeah,
So-
that was me.
Okay, it's a barrel sauna. There we go. That was the new
Wow.
piece of equipment. I actually ordered it a long time ago, so this has been hard for me to keep a secret. It was like a Black Friday deal, but it took like 6 weeks to get here, and then another like week to build, and then another 2 weeks for an electrician to. You don't just plug these things into your wall. Like it's a 220 volt like a dryer type connection, and so I had to get one of those into my wall. So anyway, this has been in the works for like 2 months, and I finally now can like talk about it. But if you wanted to know, if anyone's in the sauna market, they do Black Friday deals, and they're like 50, 60, 70% off on Black Friday. So just a heads up if you guys ever want to get into the sauna world. So that's that. Protein, since we're not sponsored by anyone, I can do this. Equip Protein. We've talked about it a lot. A lot of us use Prime Protein, the company Equip. I finally heard back from them on their leucine content. It's 1.3 grams of leucine per serving, so per scoop. So Equip's out, not enough leucine. So I have to move to a new protein. Now, I will say it is a good protein. It's a clean protein. And a big reason I liked it is because it was non-dairy, and also there's a lot of like collagen and other things in that protein because of the way it's made. So I'm still a big fan of that protein, and for those reasons. But I don't consume any other supplement. Most of my leucine is probably from food. So I wanted to try and increase my leucine intake based off of last week's podcast. So I've actually moved to pea protein. It's called NorCal Organics, and it is straight, like just smashed peas into powder form. There's no other ingredients. There's one ingredient, and it's peas. But anyway, you don't have a lot of options if you can't consume dairy with leucine and protein. So my options are egg white protein, pea protein, and is that it?
I thought you were going to add aminos.
Yeah, so I tried that, but the amino acids are made from milk, and that was giving me problems too. So I'm just like, all right, new protein source. So pea protein is what I'm doing. And that's it. Should I talk about the shirt designs? Maybe. It's not as funny if you...
Okay.
Okay, I'll just mention it.
You have to say something now.
Yeah, because everyone's like, okay, so we hired a graphic designer to make a bunch of new shirts for Garage Gym Athlete. A lot of the ideas that we've thrown around the podcast we're trying to get executed. And it's kind of hard to explain some of these ideas to a graphic designer who's maybe not into fitness. And then also some of the concepts that we talk about are kind of complex. They're like deep fitness ones. So if you go all the way back to one of our first shirt ideas, it was fat breather. Because I talked about how where does fat go when you are quote unquote burning fat? Well, your body utilizes energy, it uses fat, it breaks down that carbon chain, you breathe out the carbon, and that's where the fat goes. You breathe most of it out. Like 95% of the fat that you lose comes out as exhaled carbon dioxide. So anyway, I tried to explain that concept to a graphic designer for a fat breather shirt. And what we got was a fat person breathing on a shirt with a carbon bubble. And if you are the graphic designer who made this, I'm not making fun of you. You had a lot of other good options, or decent. Let's just go with decent. Decent options for the fat breather, but it was bad. So we're going to have to, if anybody has any great fat breather ideas for t-shirt, you can send it my way. And just go ahead and email it to me, and we might utilize your design for a new shirt, because that's just offensive, right? Like, and not what we're talking about fat as in the molecule, like not a fat person breathing. And I don't, if you look at my description of like the design brief, I never mentioned I need an overweight or obese human being breathing. I mentioned all the science behind it, but that was probably too much.
I guess to her credit, I'll challenge anybody out there to go and tell someone that about the fat breather idea that hasn't listened to the podcast and ask them what they would think that was. And then let's just see what happens.
It's really hard. Like, I want a fat breather shirt very badly. But it has to like communicate the entire idea without you really having to explain it to people. And that's hard. Get the wheels turning, guys.
I'm sure someone in our community could come up with it.
There may be a reward.
Ooh.
And I'll be real vague with what the reward is.
Because you don't even know yet.
Yeah, because I don't even know yet. All right, guys. Well, let's get into the study. This week's podcast is how to become more powerful, thus stronger. The study that we're going over is visual feedback attenuates mean concentric barbell velocity loss and improves motivation, competitiveness, and perceived workload in male adolescent athletes. It was done in 2019 by Weekly. Didn't catch the first name. So what were they looking at? Really, it was just could like visual feedback, like so seeing the velocity in your training, how fast like the barbell is moving, could that make you move the bar faster, and could it make you more competitive and improve your overall performance? And what they did, so they're averaging, concentric velocity each rep, so the up portion of the rep on the squat, across 10 reps of the back squat at 65% of the 3-rep max. They had young males in the study, ages 16 to 18, that were rugby sub-elite players, and there were 15 total. Let's see. Did I miss anything as far as briefing what the study was? Nope. Yeah, they tested them over the course of, I think it was three workouts, and they flip-flopped, not being able to see the velocity and being able to see the velocity, so on and so forth.
So it's not just increasing the velocity, it's seeing if you can decrease the way the rate of your velocity drops. Yeah. Right. So
between beginning to end. Yeah.
I had to look up what the word attenuates mean. And that's what attenuates means, to decrease. So decrease the velocity loss. So in other words, your velocity doesn't drop off as quickly.
All right. Good.
Hopefully I explained that.
No, you did.
That's something I had to look up.
No, so that works perfectly. Now, drum roll, just the quick, they got faster. When you could see it, they got faster. They lifted faster, 7.6% faster. And that's really awesome. I have a lot of takeaways. Before we get to that, does anybody have any points on the study that they want to hit? Start with you, Joe.
I think we all have points. This is a small study. It's a very small group. They mentioned that it would be good for. And this is basically
boys.
But the high schoolers.
Yeah.
This is what we talk about with dynamic lifting and lifting explosively. I kind of wondered if doing it this way with concentrating so much on velocity all the time, if it would tax you even more, like mentally and physically, like taxing your CNS or anything like that.
I think 100% it would.
Yeah. So one of my takeaways was that it would just be good for using every once in a while, like very sporadically, maybe checking every couple of weeks, but not if you're doing it every training session, then it's kind of, I wouldn't say defeat the purpose, but I think it would be too much.
It's a really good point. I didn't think of that. So getting burned out by trying too hard all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
That's it.
All right, Kyle.
Well, besides what I just explained of having to spend that much time figuring out what attenuates means, I guess exactly what Joe said of taxing your central nervous system a little too much, but maybe just use it every now and then. But that's also the thing is that it wasn't a large difference. It didn't make a large difference. It did make a bit of a difference, but it didn't make a large difference.
7.6% faster.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the methods that they used to measure it was a device that was linked to the barbell, if I remember correctly, because they were doing the back squat. And so it was a device linked to the barbell that was also linked to an iPad, which measured it where you could see what your velocity was after each rep. And so, I was just thinking, how does this apply to a garage gym athlete? But I guess the best thing you could do, maybe use a training partner that could help you, giving you cues and things like that to push you and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't really have any other takeaways from it.
Ashley, how about you? I have some counterpoints to your points.
Oh,
Kyle.
Good.
My points for this one was it did show that there was a positive impact on the athletes, on the rugby players. So for us as a garage gym athlete, I think if you take away the velocity part of it, especially when we do every cycle we do a fit week, I think it's great to video yourself. Also, we have someone that is, we sometimes recommend, if you're, for example, the back squat, that's the workout that they were doing. We say to have someone who could be there to spot you and whatnot. And I just find that if you are, even just verbal cues, like you can get another rep or you can do more weight. I find for myself, as well as other people that I have helped trained, that they actually add more weight or able to find that extra oomph to push themselves. So I think that exactly what Joe said, I think that's good some of the time, to always have to constantly do that. You could tax yourself, but I think that's awesome to do that some of the time, video yourself to see techniques, sorts of stuff like that. And then I always find that I like to work out with others when I want to push myself on a workout like that. So, if I did Murph with you guys, I would have someone to visually see, to try to keep up with and to try to push myself to yet another level, versus if I didn't, I'm having to mentally do that as well. So that was my takeaway for garage gym athletes on this study.
Yeah, training partners are huge. One thing Kyle mentioned, and this is something we don't know, but he said, it didn't help that much. That's what I would actually like to know. I don't know if there could be like a follow-up study, but I would love to see some sort of correlative data between you are moving the weight 7.6% faster on average, increased velocity to increased 1 rep max over a 12-week training program. So like one group just moving the weight and then the other people moving in the weight quickly and tracking their velocity and then seeing like what the 1 rep max increase differences would be. I bet it would be significant. So I wrote an article a long time ago called The Missing Element in Your Strength Program. It's actually part of a 3-part series. Part 1 is a simple method I use to double my strength horsepower. So again, that's talking about moving fast. And we've mentioned it on the podcast before, but there's a video in there, me side by side. One of them I'm lifting, I think is 500 right on the nose for a deadlift. And the other one, I think it's 525. And there's a side-by-side comparison video, and the 525, I move much faster, almost twice as much. And I calculate out the horsepower difference and how much different it just looked, because moving weight slowly isn't beneficial. And that happened when I started focusing on moving weight quickly a lot more. And that was all I did, was adding the dynamic effort method into my training more regularly, because previous to that, I wasn't doing it. So the second one is the missing element in your strength program, where I specifically talk about power, and that's what this can do. So my big takeaway is, if you're not following our program and you're doing something else or whatever, make sure that there's dynamic effort training in your program, that you are lifting weight quickly, because it's one of the 3 methods that are going to help you get stronger, and dynamic efforts are very, very important. The third part in the article is called CrossFit Will Make You Weaker. We don't need to get into any of that right now. I think that's the whole reason Joe's here, because of that original article back in the day.
Over 8 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that it's really important. We'll link to all 3 of those articles in the study, or in the show notes, so you guys can go check those out. But I did have some other more. I think training partners is a great idea if you can. If you don't, they were using the Gym Aware software and setup, and that's about $4,000. So if you wanna get some Gym Aware software to hook to your iPad and your barbell, it's about $4,000, and not worth it at all. So I wouldn't do that. But there are 2 other ones, because we're not looking for scientific precision, right? There are a lot of apps that do this. One I found for Android I haven't used because I don't have Android. It's called Barbell Tracker. but that one looked like it was pretty decent. So Android barbell tracker, if you guys want to try this out, and then Apple MyLift. I also haven't tried that out, but I'm going to shortly after this podcast just to test it out. But it looked pretty promising. And yeah, so if you guys want to do that, because I think that measuring your velocity and seeing how fast you're lifting could be fun. And so my big takeaways was, this is a big case for tracking data when you're a garage gym athlete, especially if you're training alone, because it doesn't have to be velocity. But if you're looking at velocity every set, that's great. You can try and get it faster. I think Joe's point of not overusing the method is a great point too, but it gives you just something to focus on during that training session, right? And speed is important. I already talked about, but that self-competition is really my main point and takeaway is when you're tracking data, it's always good to be tracking something to see if you can manipulate that number, right? So like if you're like, hey, I want to try and get my resting heart rate lower over the course of 12 weeks, what are all the ways I can do that? And not just track for tracking's sake, but actually see how you can manipulate data. So I think this is really great for a garage gym athlete to use one of these apps maybe, or a training partner, and start moving weight more quickly, because it's going to result in you being a lot stronger and more powerful human being in the long run. Because that's the strength is just being able to move weight, right? But power is being able to move weight quickly. That's like the actual equation. So the more you can do that, the better. And then my last point for those who are subscribed to our programming, listen to the athlete briefs. It's normally briefed when you're supposed to be lifting fast. If you're like, where are these dynamic efforts he's talking about? Like, you need to pay attention to the brief, because most of the time it will be in there and tell you when you need to be moving for speed with good form. So that's everything I had on this one in my overall takeaways. Any points, counterpoints to my points, or follow-ups or whatever?
Just a small one. When I was first reading it one of the things I thought of was having the velocity tracker in front of somebody and then just telling them to lift faster almost made the velocity tracker a placebo, because all they were doing was showing them that they could lift faster, and they were lifting faster versus just telling them to lift faster. So just know that if you really go in there with the intent of lifting faster, you will be lifting faster.
Yeah, and we talked, like, we covered that on a podcast, right? Yep. There was a study that came out where just saying, like, just coaching that, just saying, hey, you need to move faster here, is going to be a world of difference, because, a lot of times people don't know. If I'm like, hey, 60% for 3 reps, they're like, that's really light for 3 reps. It's like, well, you need to move it fast. That's, that's the big thing. Because if I just gave you, hey, 60% at 3 reps and you knew nothing else, you'd do those reps and you would probably just do them like, slow, controlled repetitions. You wouldn't be thinking about trying to do them really fast with good form. So yeah, just focusing on that. And I know when I'm dialed in that much mentally into a training session, like Joe was saying, they are a lot more taxing. I'm like, all right, every rep is fast and dialed in and concentrated. It does get really taxing, but it's probably where the results happen.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
All right. Let's get into the book. So the book was Deep Nutrition by Catherine Shanahan. Had that right?
Yep.
Nailed it. MD. Sorry, I disgraced her right off the bat. I'm not saying Dr. Catherine Shanahan. I think, Joe, you're gonna take it with the kind of an overview, and then we all have different points on the book, and we'll cover what we can in the amount of time that we have. So, Joe, go ahead, man.
Yes, I'll kind of go over what the book mostly covers and why I kind of love it so much. So, background to how she went about this diet, because she had her own medical issues, and then she was trying to figure out ways of, like, being a doctor. She mentions a few times that in med school they take one nutrition class, and like it just doesn't cover anything at all. So she went to, and a couple of doctors have done this, and they go dive deeper. So she was inspired by I don't know who, but a dentist a long time ago that started looking into ancestral diets and things like that, of how it affects your teeth. So she took that idea and ran with it and examined 11 different indigenous tribes, cultures, people that are unaffected from the Western world, and saw these cultures and found that they were living longer. They didn't have all these heart diseases, the autoimmune diseases, anything like this. They didn't have diabetes or stuff that the Western world, who supposedly know better, have. And with those cultures, she's put down their diets and came up with 4 better human or whatever human diet pillars that she comes up with. Yep, the human diet.
We can call it better human. It's fine.
Yeah, better human diet. There you go. We're just all partnering here. And the 4 things that she came up with that she found that these people did was, the first one was to eat meat on the bone. So cooking meat that is on the bone, and that also means bone broth and how awesome bone broth is. Most of the meat that I cook now, especially ever since reading this book, was cooking meat on the bone. And I will probably cook a whole chicken almost once a week, pick all the meat off of it, save the carcass. And when I get like 4 carcasses, I make a giant pot of bone broth, which takes about 24 hours. And I use that bone broth for all kinds of stuff. And it's fantastic to have.
You just keep the carcass in the freezer?
Yep. I can fit 2 carcasses per big Ziploc baggie if you kind of smash them down a little bit. So eating meat on the bone is the first one because of all the extra nutrients that the bones have. Next one is fermented and sprouted foods. So that's like kimchi, that's kombucha, things like that. But also she dives more into how other foods that should be sprouted and fermented aren't anymore, like soy, of how damaging soy is because they don't do the proper fermentation process like they used to. And with like the wheat berries to make bread. So the best bread you can eat is sprouted sourdough, which is what we eat if we do eat bread. And then there's a whole bunch of other cultures that do different fermentations of stuff. And, when they use part of with the animal on the bone, meat on the bone, they use every single little bit of it, which goes right into the next point of eating organ meats and the other bits, because organ meats have a ton of things, and it is probably the least sexy thing out of all of them. It's the one thing that I actually keep forgetting about. That's one of the pillars. I haven't been brave enough to go and get any giblets or kidneys or anything like that, but I kind of want to. We'll see.
Liver and onions? You've never done it?
Eyeballs?
Man, my dad tried to make us eat liver and onions as a kid, and that's just terrible for a kid. I should probably try it now if you prepare it right, but I'll have to really dive into how to prepare it right.
I'm just surprised. Like, I know it is, but I'm just surprised like liver is healthy, because like
it's the filter.
Liver is a filter for the body. Like it filters your blood out. Like, I don't understand how it's good for you. It seems like you'd be like eating the oil filter out of your car with all this junk in it, but apparently it's good. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it processes things. And then the last one is fresh, unadulterated plant and animal products. So no imitations, no additions. So eating actual produce and cooking it yourself, that's just regular clean eating. She also talks about eating raw veggies and things like that, even some raw meats, if you do them right. And that's one thing that I also want to work on, is eating more raw vegetables. I cook mine, but I just haven't been a fan of too many raw veggies. And earlier in the book, there's a quote that I wrote down early on when I first read it. Was we're talking about how all these companies are, you see the marketing on all the labels on this has this has that, and that nature, like companies want you to think that nature doesn't know best, factories do, or corporations do. So like they're artificially making all this stuff, making you think that, okay, you don't need the natural thing because all our products have all this stuff in it anyway. But that's really not the case.
Yeah, that's kind of something that she talks about in the book, with like, even with like health supplements and like trying, like getting these concentrated doses. And I think about this all the time, because like turmeric is really good for you. It's anti-inflammatory, right? And I take turmeric supplement sometimes, not all the time. But when I take it, it can be anywhere to half a gram or a gram, and it's like, to get that much turmeric, by itself, you have to eat a lot of turmeric to do so. But on top of that, you're not actually eating turmeric. And I'm sure there's other things like fiber and all these other things that balance it out to where your body can utilize it better. And so that's true of like almost everything out there. It's like, if you take one single ingredient, even if it's from nature, there's probably something missing that, nature intended for the whole thing to be eaten or whatever, that could be utilized a little bit better.
Yeah. And then the final 2 points that she brings up, and she goes over to extreme and considerable detail, are, so the 4 pillars would be the 4 ins, and then these would be the 2 outs. So 4 pillars you should add into your diet. And the first 2 things that she goes over before the 4 pillars to take away from your diet are heavily processed and vegetable oils and sugar. And well, she's kind of known for going after the oil industry and vegetable oil industry. And the last thing I'll say about the sugar part is that I don't have it here anywhere, but I remember in the book, she goes over a study that was done that compared rats, that they fed rats cereal, just like regular breakfast cereal. And then the other rats, they starved to death. And the rats that they fed cereal died first.
Wow. And I think she mentions in there that sugar is more addictive than cocaine.
Yep.
Yep.
Insane. So I'll just kind of do some of my takeaways from stuff that you pretty much mentioned. Sugar, I think, is covered. Like, we all really know, like, hey, don't consume a lot of sugar. And I don't even think that, like, people are like, oh, don't demonize sugar. I don't think that you can demonize it enough. Like, they're like, and it's really in the, I'm not talking about like if you're eating a little bit of sugar from honey or having fruit or something like that. It's when you're drinking your calories where sugar becomes a really big problem. And I think it's high fructose corn syrup is in 70% of all foods in the grocery store. So if you think that you're not consuming sugar or high fructose corn syrup, you might want to think again, because 70% of anything you're going to touch at a grocery store is going to have it in there, even things that shouldn't. So I think we all know about sugar. People try to stay away from it to some degree, so that's fine. The oils thing I think is really interesting. So she talks about, there's two different antioxidants. There's ones that your body can create naturally, and then the other ones that you're going to get from eating foods. Those are the two different kinds. But then oils like disrupt PUFAs or whatever, in your brain and screwed up because we just haven't adapted to being able to process these vegetable oils. So it screws up your brain. It causes a lot of inflammation. But my main takeaway for people is, like, you might be at home and you're like, okay, don't worry about it. I cook with olive oil, because olive oil is, one of the okay ones, and avocado oil, coconut oil, those things are a little bit better. But if you ever go to a restaurant, like ever, you're consuming that oil, whether you want to. And I'm not talking about like Chick-fil-A. I'm talking about like you could go to an awesome Mexican restaurant or whatever, and they're going to be cooking with an oil that you don't want to be eating. And hey, I go to restaurants and we eat out, but we don't have these there's like one restaurant who doesn't use these oils in our area. It's a really healthy restaurant, but otherwise you just kind of have to take it in there. But it's something I'm always thinking about, and so, like, what do you order to kind of minimize that? Or could you ask to not have something soaked in oil? There are a lot of ways that you can order differently. And then sometimes I'm just like, well, I'm just going to bite the bullet on this because I don't eat out all the time. And so whatever damage is done, as we say around here, got to run a little diesel through the engine every once in a while. So I'll just, deal with it. But that's a big place. I think a big takeaway for garage gym athletes is, reduce the sugar. These oils, the sugar and oils sneak into your life no matter what. You don't need to be sitting around chugging vegetable oil to be in a bad state. You just kind of need to be living your life, and you'll probably be consuming more oil than you want to. And that's the same with sugar. So you have to be really on top of it. And then my last point was just kind of funny, like, eat your freaking vegetables. Like, eat raw vegetables. That's it. Like, I've been saying it for a long time. And the only reason I'm saying it is because I was told, as my earliest memory, like as a human, to eat my vegetables as far as nutrition is concerned. It's funny how important that information is. I said that's my last thing. I actually have two others. I need to increase my meat game. I really thought about it with this book. People talk about paleo, right? And they're like, do as our ancestors did. And then that's not really what you're doing, though, when you go to the store and you get a filet every time. You're like, filet.
Skinless chicken breast.
Yeah, like, that's not what our ancestors were doing. They were killing one animal and then devouring every part of it. And this book kind of made that light bulb go off for me, I guess. It was just like, yeah, like, I don't eat anything. Like, I eat the good part of the meat that I want. And to think about our ancestors doing that, to like kill a cow and then just like cut off a good part and then walk away, is ridiculous. They consumed everything. And I think for that whole is meat healthy, unhealthy debate that people like to have, well, if you're like killing the animal and eating every part of it, that's probably a lot healthier than just having this one sliver of meat all the time. And sprouted bread is delicious. That was my last point.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right, Ashley, if you want to go.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the meat stuff. I'm just going to kind of tag along to that. Reading part of this book really made me miss the UK just because of their regulations with food and how they're
so much better.
Yes.
Oh
God.
my goodness, it's amazing. And so now moving back to the States, that was something that I've brought up to Scott, and I kind of want to find some people that are around here. I want to split like a full cow and just go from there and have somebody, actually slice up the cuts that we want from the animal. So just to kind of cut the middleman out, if you will. And then the other takeaway that I took from her was at the beginning of the book, she kind of talks about your genetics and all sorts of stuff. But what she touched on was women who were pregnant and obviously having a little one of my own. I remember how my nutrition when I was pregnant, it changed a lot. And I think I have very good self-control when it comes to things. But for me, when I was pregnant, I was just like, it's the baby. The baby craves this right now. This is what I'm going to eat. But she talked on how, and this is not just for females, it can be for multiple things. She talked about, again, supplementation with a prenatal vitamin. And she talked about how most females think, okay, well, I'm getting this prenatal vitamin, so that's going to make up for potentially the bad habits that I'm doing. And she talked about how you're not actually eating real food. So my takeaway for that is for anyone, not just females who are pregnant, but specifically for females who are pregnant, eat real food, eat holistic, good, clean food, even if you're taking a prenatal vitamin or even if you're taking whatever supplement you're taking, whoever you're out there, eat good, clean, holistic food. And then my last takeaway, we talked about cereal. Jo touched on it a little bit, and she talked about how Cheerios essentially has the same ingredients that a dog food would have, if you think about it like that. She talked about the hydrogenated oils and the sugar, and she's like, throw on a little bit of salt and boom, you have, I think it was ramen noodles next or something like that. And then she just added, she was like, sprinkle a little protein in there, and then you've got hamburger helper. And so she was saying that all of we always talk about the perimeter of the grocery store for a reason, because the inside of the aisles, she basically is saying, you're the human and you're the one who is grabbing all of these products to fill your cart with. And it's essentially dog food. Like if you look,
does that make you want to try dog food or stay away?
No,
from it? Okay. No, just kidding. I'm a little curious now, though. Like,
my dog eats grain-free food.
Yeah, so does mine.
Oh man! So eat real food, holistic, clean food.
Awesome, Kyle. We left you. That's hard to go last, man.
There's so much in here.
Next time you'll go first, and so I'm sure all your points have been stolen. But whatever you have, man.
I'm used to it, man. This is just how I live my life. No, going back to the meat thing, there's a show that I watch on Netflix. Sometimes it's called Meat Eater. Pretty self-explanatory, but it's a guy named Steven
I think that's been
Ranella.
Suggested to me.
Netflix,
Steven Ranella. Hey, watch this.
Yeah, and he goes to a bunch of places all around the world, and he's an outdoorsman. He hunts and fishes and all that. But the most fascinating part of the show, which it's a hunting show, so like or an outdoorsman show, so he doesn't always catch something or he doesn't always kill something. So sometimes some episodes are just kind of like, he goes to Alaska a lot, so sometimes he's like, it's really just him like walking around in horrible weather in Alaska. But most of the time he does kill something. And he like butchers it in the field, which most hunters do. You field dress it, but it shows that part on camera, and he shows, how to cut those pieces off and how to harvest the animal after you've killed it. And then he takes it back to camp and he actually cooks it. And so he shows how to cook these different cuts of meat, and especially the organ meats, which I've never seen like somebody like cut and eat the organ meats, from a fresh kill. And so that's been very eye-opening to me, to kind of what we're talking about here. That's about as close to kind of what our ancestors would have been doing, was stalking an animal. And you see how difficult that is in real life, even today, how difficult it is to stalk an animal and kill it. But then to harvest it in the field and take it back and cook it properly, and cooking all the different pieces of it and how nutritious it is and how important it is to use the whole thing. So I would recommend that. That's just something that's about as close as I've ever seen, to somebody kind of doing that ancestral type of hunting. I mean, he's using modern weapons and stuff like that, but
dynamite and stuff.
Yeah. That's his go-to method, especially when
for
fishing. Is just throwing dynamite in there. But one of the things that stood out to me in the book was something she called active adaptive evolution, which is basically how markers in your genes get toggled on and off. And how the food that you eat can do that to your genes, can get in there and actually toggle things in your genes on and off. And one of the studies that she referenced to go along with that was some guy had a pig in a lab and deprived her while she was pregnant, deprived her of vitamin A during the study. And all of her piglets were born without eyeballs.
Or they were just blind. One of those things, either way. Yeah.
Well, the way she said it was they didn't even develop eyeballs in the womb. And it's because of this vitamin A, depravity. And it's because in the womb, their genes were not receiving vitamin A. And so their genes said, well, we don't need to develop eyeballs because there's no light here. Because if we were receiving vitamin A, we would know there was light. And then he turned around in her next litter. He did give her, all the vitamin A that she needed in regular and all that. And then her piglets were born with perfectly functional eyeballs. So it's not just that he took different pigs, and he took the same pig in 2 consecutive litters, and one was deprived of vitamin A, had no eyeballs, couldn't see, because the genes read it as there's no light here, so we don't need to spend our time developing eyeballs. And so I just thought that was just mind blowing to me, how things like that can actually trigger, and that it goes into the discussion of when we talk about like celebrities and we talk about professional athletes and things like that, of how, they have superior genes and they won the genetic lottery and all that kind of stuff. And she really kind of pushes back against that, which I still believe that plays a big role in it, especially like for athletes. I think genetics does play a role in it, but at the same time, how our practices and our ancestors' practices, even just our parents and our grandparents' practices, can be passed down to us through our genes, and the way that they ate and the way that they took care of themselves is passed down to us. And so it's not just these people who are able to do these things, but it's also because people before them were at least doing something to try to take care of things and set them up in the right way. But that was just kind of something that stuck out to me, that active adaptive evolution, how things can get toggled on and off with the way your genes are expressed.
Yeah.
Speaking of athletes, she was actually the nutrition coach for the Lakers when Kobe was on the team for a little while.
Yep.
That I learned later on.
Yep.
Yeah. We've been doing the snippets on this podcast, and we had Dr. Anthony J. So I talked a lot during the full episode, and then the snippet of epigenetics. Mm-hmm. And, so very brief. So you have genetics. You're basically, this is the hand that you were dealt. But then on top of that, you have epigenetics. So your diet, lifestyle, and training can maximize so you like have these parameters. If you have crappy genes, you might be able to max out crap. You know what I mean? If you have really good genes and you have terrible everything else, you could really pull down, but still be like pretty good at at certain things. And so I think a lot of people use that I have bad genetics, or it's a genetic thing to lean on, but like, have you truly tapped into the full epigenetic potential? Like, have you maximized what's possible? And most of the time the answer is no for most people. So that's a big thing. And another thing I wanted to mention was, you mentioned this adaptive genetics, whatever I want to screw it up, but there's essentially a new gene. It's like a mutation to where people, they don't process sugar. They just pee it out. And so they can eat as much sugar as they want. The body, it's not like they can't use it. It's like the body uses what it wants and then just like pees the rest out, which is the ideal situation. Like that's perfect. So if you're going to consume a really crappy high sugar diet, and your body's just like, hey, we'll take what we need and pee the rest out. That's awesome. You know, I'm not sure if they're like, I'm sure there are like problems if you have that mutation or whatever, something I'm not thinking about. But when I heard that, I'm like, are we going, like, something's going to break. Either you're going to break in this evolutionary process of like, because evolution doesn't happen quickly, right? So it's going to be like, you can be the experiment and see if your genes adapt to smoking and not working out and eating sugar and doing all this junk. But the alternative there is it does adapt. Like there could be because the world's not getting better. Like I'm not a pessimist, but the world, like everyone is so obese, like things are not moving in a good direction. So if we were to cast out 1,000 years from now, does everything just stay the same? And the people who don't die off are the people who can pee out sugar and like their lungs don't react to, pollution. And like, are those the people who are going to survive, which are still going to be like weird humans, right? But like that, the world's not going to change. It's the human that's probably going to change and adapt to all this crap. The unfortunate truth, just my opinion there, but cool conversation too there. Like a thought experiment. What's going to happen to the world?
Oh no.
All right, I guess we can get into good book review. Do we feel like we covered it?
Yeah.
I mean, this was a fantastic book to start with. I feel like we raised the bar on ourselves.
Hey, dude, Why We Sleep, not
or don't sleep.
Nope.
Don't sleep on
Why We
sleep
is a game changer in life.
No.
I can't even. So I'll give you a quick. Everyone should read the book. I used to wake up and do a morning routine every day. I said used to. I don't do that anymore. I sleep more after having read that book. So just think, I've been doing a morning routine for like 5 years.
Welcome
every
to the
morning.
club, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already been sleeping more.
I don't morning routine already.
I guess you would have to know how big of a deal that is for me to not be doing anymore.
Yeah.
Waking up at 4:30 was what I used to do. And now I wake up super late, like 6 every day. So it's crazy.
That's my early.
I have to wake up it doesn't matter. I have to wake up at 6. I wake up at 6. All right.
Workout.
Yourself Saturday. I'll brief it. Quarter mile for humanity is the workout. So with a barbell in the front rack, you will perform 10 total lunges, 5 each leg, then stop, stand in place and do 5 reps of push press. You'll continue until you have completed 400 meters. So that's the quarter mile, or quarter mile for distance. And if you don't have 400 meter distance, you do 60 rounds of what? Oh, just 10 lunges. Yeah. About to say what? So that's a brutal. I've done it once. I'm not gonna lie. This is not one I have repeated. I've done it one time or maybe twice. It's been around for a while. I did it once before it was an actual workout. I created this. No, I definitely have done it twice. So I did it once on a track with a bunch of military. This is when I was like physical training leader in the military. We did this workout on a track. And the first time I did it was like really like one of the most brutal things I think I've ever done. But sometimes when you're with a lot of other people and it's just, makes it worse. Second time I did this was here in Texas, but at my old house, and pretty bad. Have you guys done it?
Did you say the push press part?
I did.
He did.
I may have missed it. Okay. I haven't done this one specifically, but way back when on my last deployment, when I was looking up fitness workouts and stuff like that, I came across, was it Seal Fit? And Seal Fit do these, and they call them Curtis P's or P Curtises or something like that. And I did those a bunch, and they get brutal pretty quick. Like you can do a couple of them in a row, but then you got to set the bar down and shake it out a little bit, and your shoulders are going to get taxed and legs, and yeah.
That quarter mile does not come quickly.
I don't think I've done this one specifically, but we have had programmed before 400 meters of walking lunges. We've had that programmed before, and so I have done that part. And I cannot
this
imagine
a little bit.
I cannot imagine doing that with a barbell front rack and throwing push presses in there too.
So it's just the barbell. Just everyone's clear though too. Like people are normally some type A's normally chime in the group and they're like, how much can I put on? I'm like, nothing.
If you think you're awesome,
do nothing still. And then if any pushback further from there, I say 135 and just watch awfulness happen.
Oh my gosh.
Actually, have you done this one?
Yes, I've done it both ways. So I've done it where we've done actual 400 meters, or we've also done it in the gym at Lake and Heath in the UK. So we did the 60 rounds, and I promise you the 60 rounds is so much harder than the actual quarter mile. I think it takes longer, actually. If I need to go back and compare. I journal everything. But
being taller, I want to do the meters.
Definitely. And then you kind of, like, if you can see the end in sight, which will be different for me this time, because I will do it on Saturday, because I'm going to do it around my cul-de-sac. So there's not going to be like an end of the track. You know what I mean? Like, if you can kind of get on a track and just kind of what you did, I feel like the end in sight is better. / it kind of pushes you more. But in your brief, you also challenge people to not put the barbell down.
That is the ultimate challenge.
Yeah. So I can proudly say that I did that.
Oh, so nice. I bet your shoulders were burning.
Oh, 100%. And I said some choice words and may have cursed you out, but it was great. It was a good time.
When I was in the military, we did everything around a quarter mile track, quarter mile burpees, quarter mile lunges, quarter mile broad jumps. Like, we just did all sorts of quarter mile workouts. A lot of them haven't even been programmed here yet, but it's coming.
I guess this is a good time of year to do it on your quarter mile track instead of like clotheslining the people in 3 lanes around you with the barbell.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. You mean because nobody else would be there.
And I was like, on the track.
It's 30 degrees today, man. It's not a good day.
Great day in San Diego.
I don't live in San Diego. Okay.
I think that's it. It's a good one. Give it your all. Don't go faster. Just get it done. There you go. The first time I probably said don't go faster. I can't wait to start doing Meet Yourself Saturday again. Because Murph is almost over. 3 as of recording this. So this weekend is 50, and then I have 51 and 52. And I'm just, if anyone was concerned, I still am ahead of VD for the current time.
He's saving it to the very last one.
I know. I'm watching. He doesn't post. Last week we got the same exact time, minutes and seconds.
Ooh,
that's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. How's that even possible? Well, it's possible because I wait like about 10 seconds after I finish the workout to hit stop. So that's. I'm just kidding. All right. Why join Garage Gym Athlete, guys?
I'll go first. And it's funny because of what we brought up earlier in the podcast. I've actually had this one ready for like 3 weeks. So
here we go. I'm ready for it.
It's because we can make you a fat breather.
There it is. And we mean what we mean.
Breathing out fat, yeah. Not if that person breathing hard.
And again, the gauntlet has been thrown down to the Garage Gym Athlete community. If you have some graphic design skills and you want to go for the Fat Breather t-shirt for an unidentified reward, do it. All right, Kyle, do you have a reason why people should join Garage Gym Athlete?
Well, we are undertaking this new job of breaking down some very helpful books for you. There's obviously a lot of information, especially in deep nutrition. That is a big book. There's a lot of stuff in it, but
it's a 24-hour audio book. It's
giving you some helpful
epic fantasy range.
Yeah, giving you some helpful things to kind of as a book review, kind of a breakdown of some things that are actionable and practical for you. Where if you don't have 24 hours to throw in an audiobook, or 12 if you do like us,
12, I was going to say
2x, or if you don't want to sit down and read that much, that's okay. Just wait till next month and we'll break the book down for you and give you some actionable stuff that you can use out of it, and you can go improve your life that way.
Ashley?
Because you've got coaches that care about you so much. We choose studies and books that will help you and better you.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously being a part of Garage Gym Athlete supports everything we're doing here. We do appreciate everyone who is out there currently supporting Garage Gym Athlete, getting training done. But one last point, you mentioned 2x speed. I've been thinking about this because I reread The One Thing I do every year in January. Hey, relax. And one point that he talks about, and this is also in, I think, the book Mastery, they talk about deliberate practice. So getting better at something by deliberate practice, because if you just do something on a day, you're not going to get any better. And the example they often use is typing. We all type a lot. I type a lot for my job. I'm sure you guys type a fair amount. So why aren't we these expert typers who can go to like competitions and type faster than anyone else? Is because we're not deliberately trying to get better at typing, right? We've gotten to a proficient level, and that's where we're at. And this may sound like I'm setting up this really profound thing, but I'm not. What I'm trying to set up is Audible. So I had
Not
to
a
work,
sponsor.
I had to work up to getting to 2x speed. And Kyle just mentioned that 24-hour audiobook could be 12. Well, Audible goes up to 3.
What?
I don't know if anyone knew that. So Audible 2
I've tried it.
2 is
Doesn't
middle
work.
of the road. And I've been really thinking, like I stopped at 2. But I worked up to 2. I was like, I'm going to do 1.25 for a while, 1.5, 1.75, 2. And that 2 is easy for me. But I had to work to it. It wasn't always the case. And I'm like, you know what? You just got comfortable right here. You got complacent. No more deliberate practice in trying to understand things at a faster rate. So I'm going to try for 3 by the end of the year. I'm going to be trying to.
There's not like a 2.5 in between?
No,
There is. It goes
end
up to
goal
3.
is 3. The end goal is 3. I'll go to like 2.25, 2.5, 2.75, then 3. So just deliberate practice. It's important.
See, I actually went the opposite way. I backed it back down to 1.5. I went zone 2 reading.
Oh my God.
I'm not lazy. I'm 1.5.
Right. And I'll tell you what, it was a challenge to listen to it because it sounds so slow to me. It was
1.0. People are probably listening to this right now at 2x speed on the podcast. I can't listen to podcasts at 1 point. Like I'm so glad if like a year or 2 ago, YouTube added the whole play this at 2x speed. Like I watch videos at 2. I listen to everything at 2. So if when I'm having a normal conversation, like you all talk way too slow to me. I'm like, can that come out faster, please? It's just you listen to too many Audible books and podcasts at 2x speed. Human conversation gets awkward. Okay, I'm going to end it right there and say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.